Heather, welcome to the show.
Thank you. So fun. Excited to be here.
We're glad to have you. Would you mind giving our listeners the 411 on who you are and what you're going to bring to the show today?
So I am Heather Cox, president and co-founder of Certify My Company and co-mastermind of Diversity Masterminds. And we are going to talk about business opportunities and all the money that entrepreneurs tend to leave on the table just because of unknown, opportunities, unknowns. We'll see what unknowns.
They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. You don't know what you don't know. Exactly.
Okay, sounds
good. So now we're going to teach them what they don't know, or some of what they don't know.
All right, that sounds good. We'll try to pack it in here for our listeners. Would you mind giving us the background of how you got into what you do? Little history behind who Heather is. How did you start? How did you get that entrepreneurial bug? And how you brought how you became who you are right now, and how you're going to talk about Certify My Company.
So really the entrepreneurial bug, I wasn't searching for it. It was never something I was like, I really want to be an entrepreneur. But when I was pregnant with my first baby she just turned 13 yesterday. So 13 plus years ago, I was trying to figure out exactly like what my next business or like next career, job, whatever you want to call it is. I knew that I needed to work. I didn't know what that looked like. I was working for a nonprofit. I didn't love the nonprofit industry. So I was really kind of figuring out what that looked like for me. And I was just speaking to a bunch of women that work, whether it be, work for someone else, whether they were executives, whether they were entrepreneurs, part-time, just asking a million questions. And the entrepreneurs though were just like, I was like, oh, where have you been all my life? You people are so exciting. I just loved their energy, their passion, like everything about them really resonated with me. So I just kept asking questions and what that looked like and what they did and how they got into it, and just peppered them with questions. I'm sure they were like, go away, Heather, at some point. But one of the things that would come up eventually with a lot of them is they're like, and there's this certification that my client keeps asking me to get, and I just cannot get through their application. And these were companies that were like 500,000, 2 million, 20 million in business. And I couldn't understand how somebody who can run a $20 million business or even a $500,000 business couldn't fill out an application, right? Like it didn't make any sense to me how that could be. So I went home and did a little research, and it turns out that it's very time consuming. And at that point I wasn't an entrepreneur. So I didn't even understand the real time consumption it was, because when you're not an entrepreneur, you don't realize all the things that we juggle as entrepreneurs, right? So, but what I did realize is that what something is called in Texas is not what it's called in California, is not what it's called in Nebraska, et cetera. So if you're looking for a document and it's not even called that, you're going to be frustrated. And so now you're going to try to, wait for, you're going to help your clients. You're going to do whatever you have to do that needs a fire right now. And there's always something to do right now. And so that application is going to be put on the to-do pile, and 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years later, you're still not certified. And so I was like, oh, I could do that for you. And Nick, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, sure, I could do that. And then it just kind of took off from there. And so I don't know if I got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I don't know if I could work for anybody else at this point. We're 12 years, or I guess we're 12 years in, right, of actually having the company. So I don't know if I could work for somebody else, because I guess I may have like slowly drank the entrepreneurial Kool-Aid, but it's in there now. It's true. We're full.
So how about take us through the mindset of when you're starting? You're unsure, you're really not positive that you see a need, you feel like you can fill that need, but you've always had a boss at that point, so you're not really trying to figure out how it's going to work. Like take us through the struggles of like starting the business. Was it something that you had to be passionate about wanting to do for yourself, but really like what kept you going when the first few months it looked like it wasn't going to work?
First few months, first few years.
First few years.
I wish it was only the first few months, right?
Yeah, right.
So, so I was working another full-time job the first few years also. I had a new baby, and then 2 years later I had another baby. So I was definitely juggling a lot, and people loved to tell me that I was a little bit nutty for doing what I was doing. But, the more I learned about the industry, the more I learned about supplier diversity, the more I was like, no, this is amazing. I've always wanted to stand up for the little guy, if you want to say that, right? And I've always wanted, been someone who's like, no, women are very powerful. They can do a lot of things if they're just given the opportunity. Maybe not the same way. Maybe we don't want the same things, right? It's like hardware, software, they do different things. They're both important, but it's a matter of, do they even have the opportunity? And the more I got into supplier diversity, I realized it was just really not, there were missing opportunities. And then as people would say to me, like, well, can you do the minority certification? Can you do the LGBT, the veteran, et cetera, et cetera? And we can get into that in a little bit. I would say, yeah. And I just kept seeing how there was, a very different level of what the world looked like and what the business world looked like, which is why I often say one of my goals is to make the business world more closely resemble the real world. Right. So, and then we're still not, they were better. And a lot of people are understanding the value of their dollar and putting their dollar to work and showing their values, demonstrating their values through their dollar. But the more I learned about it, the more I became impassioned by it and wanted to do more. And then I just get excited because you learn about these really cool products and services and like just the things that people do are really amazing. I mean, entrepreneurs are always solving problems. I'm a big advocate for problem solving. Like, don't tell me there's a problem with something if you're not willing to also offer a solution. It's like topic in our house a lot. So I always like to find out, like, I love that entrepreneurs are always solving problems. I just think it's fantastic.
So how many employees do you have now? What's your team look like?
So we have 6 full-time team members, a couple part-time team members, and then we outsource. That is the key word. We outsource our CFO, our HR. We outsource a lot of those services. We just don't need a full-time person. So we outsource all of those positions, I guess you would call them.
And you work all over the country, clients from every
globally now, actually. Yeah. So we work nationwide,
globally?
And then we've recently been getting a lot of requests overseas, which is tricky, right? So because I speak a couple languages, I mean, Spanish was my degree. I know you're super impressed by that. I got a degree in Spanish and my minor was French. And so I have a little bit of that, but I don't think I can read business documents, right? Like I kind of speak basic Spanish. Like I can ask for a beer and a taco and go to the bathroom, but that's about the extent. At this point, it's been a while since I spoke it on a daily basis. I mean, I used to be fluent. So we're really working on trying to those are kind of the kinks we're working out right now as far as how can we facilitate a certification in Zimbabwe, because there is a minority council over there for the tribes over there. So it's a matter of really understanding what that looks like.
So you sounded like learning was a big part of what you've done. So can you talk us through the learning process of how you figured this all out? Like, did it just fall in? Everything started to fall into place. Like you said, you saw that there's a need here, there's a need there. Definitely sounds like you filled a lot of needs along your way. Like, when did it click that this might be something that's not just a part-time gig and actually like a full-time gig?
Probably around year 2, we started getting a lot more requests and people were like, oh, you have to meet Heather. You have to meet Heather. And it was just me, right? It was just me until about twins are 4, so like 5.5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I really hired my first employee. So it was just me and people were like, oh, you have to meet her. She's great. You'll love her. Didn't know, whatever. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. So there was mistakes made. I had to kind of like figure things out. I will say that, I always joke that my sister is a doctor. She's extremely intellectually educated, like school smarts, right? Her street smarts, not so great. I'm like the opposite, right? Like I did well in school, mostly because like I had all the resources I need, but my street smarts really, like, I'm very resourceful. If I need to figure out a way to make something happen, I can. I'm very good at figuring out the most efficient way to do things. That's definitely one of my the strongest character traits, is that I can figure out the most efficient way to get things done, most likely. And so really just learning those components of it and learning what the certification organizations were looking like. But I will say probably the thing that did me the most favor was the relationships I built. So by building these relationships, that meant if I had a question, I could call somebody and they would take my call. How frustrating is it to all of us that when we need to find an answer, we pick up the phone and no one, and we're all really busy, right? So you strategically answer calls that A, you're going to enjoy the conversation, B, they're not going to drag on for hours if you don't have the time, right? Or C, is somebody that you can appreciate what they're calling you about. So after developing those relationships, I can get the answers I need because I've taken the time to really build those relationships.
So let's talk about relationship building. What's some ways that you relationship build, and do you ever seek people out to build a relationship with them, or is it more that you've met somebody and then you try to nurture that relationship?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, I do think that I'm not shy by nature. I think that I have a gregarious, kind of like effervescent personality. So sometimes I think that most people, not all, trust me, there's plenty of people who are like, oh, she's too much. But most people, I think, are like gravitate toward the kind of more high energy person, especially entrepreneurs, right? Especially the world that I live in of entrepreneurship and other business owners and corporate executives. So that is definitely on my side. And I have no problem talking to people about anything. Like my kids will tell you that I could talk to a wall. If the wall won't move, I'll just keep having a conversation. So I do it all the time. I just talk to people because I'm genuinely interested in most people. There are definitely boring people out there, but most people have something that I think is really interesting because it's something I can't do or I've never heard of. Or, so people will ask me sometimes when I'm going to a conference, what's your number one advice? And I always tell them, do not discount anyone that you meet. Everybody that you encounter will have something that you can learn from or take away a piece of information from. So I always like to know about other people's experiences. I think being a working mom, there's a lot of other working moms, and we have a lot of those. We can joke about the fact that we have to be Superwoman and Wonder Woman and all the things we have to do, especially during COVID. Like I have so many stories about I was potty training my twins at the time, my boy twins, and they would come up and be on the phone with like the CEO of a Fortune 100 company or the C-suite, and the twins would be like, "Mommy, I have to poopy." I'm like, and I don't know, 3-year-olds don't give you a whole lot of warning. So like those kind of stories, because like, okay, maybe it's embarrassing, but that's just what happened during our lives. And so the fact that I think that I'm willing to be vulnerable and open with people and share those parts that I'm not great at, I'd be like, I am not good at that thing. If you are, I would love to learn how you're so good at that. And I think that just naturally comes easy to me, which is, I'm very grateful for that because it has me building relationships. So my coworkers, my colleagues, my friends laugh at me because I'll be at a bar. Let's say my husband and I go out for a drink or something, and I see someone on they're like talking about their business. I'm like, are you veteran? Are you gay? Are you have a disability? Because I want to know, like, are they eligible for certification? And my husband's like, you can't ask people those questions. I'm like, but I can, and people will start talking to me about it. So I think it's just, using your natural strengths help you build those relationships. And so I'm always looking to meet new people, and I'm a classic extrovert, so that does also favor me being out there and meeting new people to build those relationships.
That's great. And I think when you're talking about the relationships, they're so important. Is there relationships that you've searched out, like people you wanted to meet that you felt like would help with your whole outlook of what you're trying to do, and maybe you can learn from them? So you're like, hey, I want to go ahead and meet this person because I know that they can help me or mentor me. And what has that experience been like?
So, it's really funny you say that. So when I first got certified, one of the things I always try to do is I always like to be the least successful and the least smartest. Like I like people smarter than me in the room, right? I always want to be surrounded by people who have done more, been more successful, and are smarter than me. Now, not everybody wants to be that person. Some people need to be the big fish in a little pond. Okay, that works for them. But I've always been like, I want to be around people who are just stellar individuals. So when you do that, what happens though is that sometimes people kind of lump you into that club. So there's definitely been times when people are like, oh, but you're already part of that. And I'm like, no, I'm actually not. I just show up and I like hang out with the cool kids. So I think that I definitely look for people that can help me, just like I'm always willing to help someone else. And I'll tell you, for example, one of these women, like the cool kids, as I call them, right, at some of the organizations I'm a part of, she runs a very successful multi-million-dollar business. And I had an issue with one of our corporate clients, and they were giving me a lot of pushback on pricing because there was a new team member, and they took over. And as a lot of us know, as entrepreneurs, you get a new team member and they're like, oh, I got this. I'm gonna get some pushback. I'll change it for us, right? They always want to save the day. And so I said to her, I said, what do I do? Like, I can't lower our pricing. We have very fair pricing. What do I do? So she helped me craft an entire letter, an email back to them exactly what that looks like and why they shouldn't, it's not in their best interest to do this type of pushback to the businesses, whatever. And because of that, they didn't push back. They paid the price that we requested and we were able to move forward, and they still have a great relationship with the organization. But, those types of relationships are really important. Do I talk to this woman every day? No. But if I see that she gets an award or vice versa, we'll congratulate each other. When we see each other at conferences, it's a big, hey sister, I haven't seen you forever, hug type of thing. So yes, I do seek out relationships with people who can help me be a better version of myself.
All right, now let's dig into what the diversification. Let's dig
Certification.
into what the diversification looks like. Let's let our listeners know exactly what you're doing for entrepreneurs out there.
Okay, so there are 5 main categories of diversity certification. We've been talking a lot about women, so we'll start with that one. So women, right? Women-owned businesses. And then there's ethnic minority-owned businesses. That's Black, Asian, Indian, Asian Pacific, Hispanic, and Native American. The third is LGBT. Then there is disability-owned, and the last is veteran and service-disabled veteran-owned. Now, I say owned, but in reality, the certification that I typically work with, those organizations, require that the company be owned, operated, and controlled by the demographic that you're certifying. So if you're certifying a veteran-owned business, they have to be veteran-owned, operated, and controlled.
All right. So you take them through getting the actual certification.
That's where you come in, right? Yes, we help them navigate the process because it is overwhelming. It's time consuming. There's so much information. If you don't know what you don't know, if we talked about it a few times, then you just get lost. You're frustrated. Most people open the application, their eyes glaze over, and then they just close it. They don't even start it because it's just so much. But what happens when you know what you're looking at, you can whittle that list down to a digestible, right? It's like saying, I can't just tell you to go climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I have to say, go take 3 steps, right? Okay, now take 3 more steps. So, and if there's a way that I can bypass a huge portion of that, then we're going to let you do it. If there's a way that I can say, oh, we can use this one document for both of these requests. But it's because I know that. I know the applications inside and out, and so does our team. So that's why I think that, we can really navigate the process for them in a more efficient, effective manner.
Okay, so why would a business owner that fits into the 5 categories want the certification?
That is the question, right? Because, well, first of all, there's no downside. But what happens is corporate America and the government, both sides, right? Whether you sell the private sector, public sector. Well, I take this back. We're going to focus on the public sector because they typically do it more for profit reasons, which resonates with those entrepreneurs better. So corporations, Fortune 1000 specifically, and their community, study after study has shown that companies with a robust supplier diversity program outperform. They have a much higher ROI to the tune of 133% to their procurement team. The shareholders make more money. Employees are much more engaged because everyone understands why you should have a diverse employee set, right? Everyone understands why you should have a diverse client base or customer base. But for some reason, the supplier base gets lost on people. But study after study show that the companies that have these programs that really focus on utilizing their diverse businesses and finding out who's diverse in their supply chain do better overall.
So you're saying it's they want the certification because they will do more business. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So what happens is the Fortune 1000, the teams will say, okay, we have a goal for ourselves to include one diverse supplier in every RFP, every bid opportunity. Or they'll say, we really want to spend this much money this year because last year we did X, we want to do X times whatever, like X times 10% or whatever it is, 10% more. So they'll be looking for companies that are diverse. Well, anyone can say they're anything, right? So by looking for certified diverse suppliers, now you have the opportunity. So what happens is, let's say I want to do business with a large pharmaceutical company, okay? And, as entrepreneurs, we knock on the door, we're like, hey, do business with me. Hey, I'm really good. Hey, can you have a meeting? And they just don't answer you. They ignore you altogether. They're like, we don't want any, and slam the door. But what happens when you have a certification is you have an advocate called a supplier diversity manager. Their job Their role inside their company is to find qualified, capable, certified suppliers that can do the job for them. So what happens is then they will be like, hey, come here. And once they like, know, and trust you, they will then do an internal introduction, a warm introduction to the person inside the company that you need to meet with. And oftentimes they can help you. They might say like, look, we know that a couple of years ago, you didn't get the gig when you applied, and here's why. Have you been able to fix that? Do you still have that issue inside your company? You have an advocate whose goal is to help you do more business, whether with a company you've been doing business with or with a brand new company. Now, if you don't want to do business with the Fortune 1000, have no fear. All these diversity organizations have huge networks of other diverse suppliers who are looking to do business with other diverse suppliers. I'm a very small business. I still hire web designers. I hire podcast producers. I hire all kinds of people. If I'm going to buy swag for something, whatever it is, I will always look for a certified diverse supplier or diverse supplier to fulfill that need for me, because I understand the value and I want people to know that it's important to me. And so the biggest way you can show it's important to you is how you spend your money.
And they also can market that too, right? That they're
yeah.
certified. Yeah. So that's another good
Everywhere.
way. So it's not,
you yell it from the rooftops. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely could see where you're right. Like if you're going to go ahead and go through the process to get certified. And what's it cost for a small business to get certified?
If you do it yourself, it's very nominal. It's, if it's most of them are under, this is a rough estimate, right? Yeah, sure. But under $1 million, around 350. If your gross sales are under $1 million, 1 to 5 million, 550, 5 to 10 million, 750, and above 10 million is 1,200 and up, depending on the organization and the region that you're in.
And if they don't want to do the paperwork, that's when your services come in?
That's when we come in. Yeah, that's when we come in. So, people usually outsource to us for a few different reasons. One, they just simply don't have the bandwidth to get it done. Yeah. They have a complicated corporate structure. And the biggest reason people are denied certification is not because they're not eligible, but because their documentation is inaccurate or incomplete. So we make sure that doesn't happen. And I'll tell you, we actually polled our single owner companies, so they have the least amount of variables to be involved there. And I said to them, how long would you think this would have taken you if you didn't have us helping you? And the average was 26 hours to complete the application. Then I asked them, well, since you did invest in Certify My Company, how many hours did you actually have to utilize of your own time to complete this application? Now, the average for that was 2 hours.
Yeah. And I can imagine an hour of it was maybe that first conversation.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right. And so you've got six employees, a lot of outsourced, going for 12 years or so. Where do you see it in 5 years? Like, where are you scaling your business? What's your pain points right now that you're working through?
So right now our pain points are, so we spent the last year, 2020, really focusing on processes and automation and trying to make our staff as efficient as possible. One of the downsides of a company like mine is it's very manual, right? We have to review. You can't really look to AI for this because it's not a black and white process. I mean, no pun intended, but it's not a black and white process. You really have to go through and look at all the documents and talk to people and figure out their story and what makes them tick and why this is going to work and why this is important and tell their story effectively. So it's very manual. So we tried to automate as much as we possibly could of reminders and just those types of components that we can. So that was a big struggle. So we had to staff up, and any entrepreneur out there right now knows that staffing is a thorn in all of our sides these days. And so we just brought on 2 people, and we're, always looking for great people that want to be part of a passionate company. So, my goal is and I've been out of it for a while. I'm gonna have to come back in, and I'm kind of like, sometimes I go in and out of the day-to-day grind, but my goal is to really focus on the speaking opportunities, being on stage, educating entrepreneurs about what it looks like to be certified, why it's important, the benefits to them, and have my team really run the certification component of it and really have them trained. I have a great team. They all love what they do. They all love being part of a diverse organization. Every one of our team meetings starts with, how did you support diversity in your own life? And we talk about that on every single meeting starts that way. And whether it be their, the screwball whiskey they drank, or the local Hispanic owned restaurant they went to, or whatever it is, we are very proud of the team who makes a conscious decision to support small, local, diverse businesses. And so that's really my goal, is to be on the road, traveling, speaking, networking, really handling the sales component, because it's the part I like the best. And I really am an advocate for people doing the part of the business that they love the most.
Well, I would think everything you described, starting the business, if I'm counting right, 4 children, right?
Five.
Okay, I missed one, and then we got 2
It's
babies
because the
and
2
2
came out at the
twins.
same time, because they're twins. That's what happens. It throws people
Okay.
off, I know.
So I would have to think that being able to build this business, you've had a lot of support at home as well, right?
You would think that, yes. No, yeah, I have.
I like that answer. Yeah, that was good.
I mean, look, we don't live near any family. My mom's an hour away. My in-laws are, thank God, across the country. So we have, but my husband is a huge supporter of mine. He is not one of those guys who's like, oh, my wife outshines me. Like, he does his own thing. He has his own business. We're very different people. So he's not, I travel. People often ask me like, oh, who's watching your kids? I'm like, their father, the other parent. Funny enough, though, when he travels, no one asks him that, who's watching his kids. So yeah, so, obviously I have to be able to. I also have raised very independent children, for the pros and the cons involved in that. My oldest just turned 13, and then I have 10, 7, and my twins are 4, and they all make their own lunch for school. The big 3 do their own laundry. They are responsible to clean their own room, because they made the mistake of one time saying, isn't the cleaning lady coming today? Why should I clean my room? And I'm like, oh, nope. No, that's for mommy. You get none of that now. So they no longer get that benefit. They're on their own. So, I purposely raised them very independently, because I knew that I couldn't coddle. I'm not coddling by nature anyways, if you couldn't tell. But I definitely wasn't going to be somebody who could spoon feed them everything. Because I'm on the road, I'm out of town, I'm very busy, and I'm not really to sit on the floor playing Barbie's tape of mommy anyways. But, we go on hikes, we go on walks, we spend great quality time together, but it's more quality over quantity, I guess. But so that's really how I do it, is the support of my nuclear family, I guess.
And Heather, where can people get more of you if they want more of you, if they want to find out more about what you do? Go ahead, give us the rundown here, please.
Well, they can always bring me into a conference. That's always the first way. Then you get in person, Heather, which is the best. Then you can also go to my social media, which is at Certify My Co. We also have at Diversity Masterminds, which is the step after you're certified, where you can learn how to leverage that very powerful tool that is certification. And go to our website, which is certifymycompany.com.
Great. Now it's time we get to solve the equation to Heather's success. Are you ready? This is where I get to ask you 7 rapid fire questions.
No. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Best seminar or teaching you've ever been to?
There was a really interesting one I went to. Well, first of all, I love Simon Sinek. I'm a big fan. But the woman named Frances, and she does a body language conference, which I thought was fascinating, about how you stand when you're having conversations with people. It says a lot about how engaged you are in that conversation.
Favorite item you've bought recently under $100?
Under $100. Probably a pair of shoes. No, we haven't bought a whole lot of stuff. Oh, I will say though, I did just get some new shiny powder. I don't know. I'm kind of vain when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? Like, I was like, I like my shiny powder. It's glittery and pretty.
Name an idol or hero of yours that you've met in person.
Ooh, that I've met in person? That's a good one. I haven't really met that many people in person. Who have I met in person? Okay, we're have to come back to that one, because I don't know. I know who we can say. Bernard Tyson. He was the CEO of Kaiser Permanente, and he was an amazing leader and somebody who breathed the DNA of diversity into his company on a daily basis. I don't care if he was being interviewed about his socks or his procurement team, or the doctors in the Kaiser Permanente system. Diversity was a component that he lived and breathed by. So, and I did get to meet him at a conference. He was phenomenal. So that would be one. He is a huge loss to the business world and the supplier diversity world.
Favorite book you'd give as a gift?
So I just said Simon Sinek. I love Start With Why. I just think it really resonates with me. It's an easy read, and it really does make you think about your business and how you do things and how you talk about your business.
And something you do every morning?
Go to the gym. or work out at least. Yeah. Every morning.
Your personal mantra or favorite quote?
Personal mantra. Well, I always tell people outsource to experts whenever possible. Because if you don't have time or money to do it once, you definitely don't have time or money to do it twice.
Place you go to decompress and reset.
The gym.
Heather, thank you so much for being a guest on the Business Equation today. You were a great guest. I think most people are going to find you insightful. I know I did. Thank you so much, Heather, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.